Hi guys, I want to run through a couple of things with you to help you guys set up for what our first hurdle is going to be on and kind of building where we're going with our coding. So I want to show you one quick thing to start with, and that is probably not right away for you guys, but what we are going to try and work towards is actually using a new way of creating applications, and that's these Windows Form apps. Okay, so if we just double click on Windows Form, we can name it whatever you would like. Call it Practice 1, and then you can create it. And so what this gives us is gives us the next level of application. So in the previous video, we talked about making a BMI calculator, obviously, which was using our console commands. And our BMI calculator just looked like this. It was this black screen with the words written, and you were interacting with it in a very simplistic way, but it performed the function quite effectively. However, if we go into these Microsoft Forms, we now get the ability to create more visual aspects to the code so that it's more user-friendly and more engaging for the user, but in some ways also performs some certain functions better. And that's where we come into that first form where we could do this with our C# coding, and that's using a Microsoft or a Windows form. And you can see from default, what I recommend doing is yours might look like this. I do recommend, particularly when using forms, grabbing this and dragging it up, because you have all these properties and from forms, so like background color, background image titles, form color, behaviors, data, and all these different pieces of information. So for example, you have data here, which we clicked on, and you can see like you have names, so it's called form 1. And then if you kind of scroll up here, you can see that text here. So under font, you can see the text is form 1 here. And you can change that to practice 1. And then click off, and you'll see up here it changes to practice 1. You can see that we have the appearance here and the background color, and you can change that as well, and it changes it over here. So this is just giving you more customizability for your application, and obviously you can create drop-down boxes and all kinds of things in this. And I just want to introduce this to you so you start thinking about it, but we're not going to get into it too much straight away, okay? I just really wanted you all to kind of see what the options were. What we want to talk about, and what's going to be our first cat, is talking about the option of creating a calculator. And obviously, the reason I showed you the forms is in the end, we want to get to the calculator point of view. But what we're going to start with, obviously, is creating the base code using a console command, and then hopefully those that are stronger and those that get there will kind of migrate that into a console form. So this is into a forms form. And this is kind of an example of a really basic calculator using console commands. And we've kind of gone through using options, so we can click 1 to add what's your first number, 12, what's your second number, 24, and then it ends, right? This is a very basic version of a calculator. Go back again, and you can click multiply 2 by 4, and you get 8. Things that obviously this calculator doesn't do, obviously, is a reset or anything like that, or it potentially doesn't have any error checking mechanisms yet. This is made by one of the Year 8 students, so it's just real basic calculator. So you see if I hit 6 or something like that, it just errors out. But this is the kind of thing we're looking at making. So things to think about when you're creating something like this, we've gone through if loops and how the console write commands and how to pass. So obviously, hopefully that's all kind of self-explanatory and we all kind of remember that. The only thing that I want to quickly go through is methods. Okay, so this is our old BMI calculator. We've all seen it before, hopefully. The one we've worked on towards making in the last class, and this is my version of the calculator that was made. It's not a perfect version of the calculator, it's just a console command, rather kind of a version of the calculator. but I use methods. The first thing I would say is remember this to remind you of the fact that this static void main is the opening method that runs when this class program is run, and in the background code, it's the class program and the main are the first things that always run when the application runs. So if you're calling on any method that you want to run, it has to be called within this main. So remember in our we had a bunch of variables created. We wrote a bunch of things in the console, and then we asked for some user inputs. And then within these user inputs, depending on the input was, we're running 3 different methods. And you can see it's really simple to call a method. You just write the name of the method. You have open and close brackets, and then you write your semicolon. And that literally calls the method. Now, you need to make sure that methods are within, I recommend to start with, we don't worry about classes, as you make sure you're calling the method within the first class. So if you scroll all the way down here, you can see that my imperial method is still within that curly bracket that denotes this class method. But you need to make sure that you've closed off the main method, which is this little one here. So if you kind of track the lines, you can see the main method closing bracket is here, but obviously the class closing bracket hasn't happened yet. And I also recommend making them public. This public makes it accessible by other methods. And then obviously it needs to be a static method, and then a void method, because we're not going to return, I mean, you can if you would like to return a value, but we're not going to return anything. So no numbers are going to come out of this method and be used by another method. Because we're just going to write our answers directly onto the console command, and then we do all our things. So it's rather simple, as you can see. And then the other benefit of using methods like this is you can see when this method, if this method glitches out, I'm using that little trick we've talked about where I really cheatily just recall itself if there's an error of some form to restart this method. I would say if you're recalling or restarting the main method outside of itself, you need to remove the string that's assigned to it within this thing. But that's really all there is to methods. They're basically a set of self-contained code that run every time it runs. So every time the imperial method is called, it runs this code that's in it. And that's why this little reboot works, because it's saying, we get to this point, just run that imperial method again. Okay, cool. We're going straight back to the start. We're running the whole code again. That's basically how methods work. It's just it's basically almost like an organizational tool. So you're saying all of this code that I've written, it's under the category of imperial. So every time I run the imperial, I run everything that's in that little category. Think about a folder. You've put all the code in a folder, and every time I open that folder, that code runs, and that's kind of what you're doing. And if you're making an effective calculator, I would say that you want to try and take advantage of these methods potentially for each individual operation. Yeah, I mean, that's really it. So the task or the challenge is to make the best calculator you possibly can, starting off with working at console commands, and then as the lessons progress, we'll talk more and more about forms and getting into that. So hope you enjoyed this, and hopefully it was informative, and you really give it your best shot. So that's awesome.